Welcome. Thank you for joining me on week 10 of Jack Canfield's book, 52 Weeks of Affirmations, Living a Life, Purpose and Passion. Before we begin, I would like to invoke and evoke the higher mind, the divine mind, and spirit to be in presence of whatever downloads and revelations come through. And while the book essentially is centered around tremendous wealth of research that Jack Canfield and his co-authors have brought together, I myself prefer and have decided to layer in each week with other fundamentals which come from the meta world, simply because um, while so many of us are awakening to our true nature and know that we want to remember who we are and know and want to recall beyond the veils that we have adopted. Um, there are so many others watching in who are probably seeking for something beyond their current reality. And so I like to build in the three affirmations that are sub themes for every week, and then kind of take it from there. So this week is all about the use and the access of how you and I can affirm, and through the practice of affirming specific things through our thinking and thoughtfulness, our discernment, our decisions. We also release certain breaks. And we're going to unpack this further through this week's affirmations. And so I would like to first look at what these mean. Essentially, what are these breaks that we are wanting to work to release? I like to think about, a young girl who is really good in singing. And there's this one day she's singing out loud and she's in joy and bliss, pure bliss, while she expresses herself. And her mom comes home and she's tired, she's had a long day, and they're both in the same room. And her mom turns to her and yells at her, tells her that she should quit with all that noise. Now, this young girl may have had a great voice at that age, but certain beliefs about her voice and her singing being noise begin to build themselves inside of her, primarily because the person that she trusted and relies on, depends on at that age, uh, views her and perceives her voice and her expression and gifts as noise. And through the years growing up, she's always been hesitant to come forward and use her voice. And even though she's had several invitations to express herself and to sing, she never does that until there comes a time when she has the opportunity, or rather, she's pushed into this opportunity by a group of friends to participate in this singing contest. She's a young teenager, and speaking from a space of rebellion, she makes the attempt and she bags the first place, to her surprise. And even though so many people have validated and expressed awe and celebration of this gift of hers. She doesn't believe it. And through that, she begins to take steps to dip her toes in the waters of reclaimed creativity and renounces all self inflicted judgment to be able to remember these beautiful, wonderful gifts that she has. And this analogy is and does hold true for all of us, primarily because while the form, that is, whether it's a parental form or an experience, which is one type of way that provides beliefs, formulation of our beliefs at younger ages. This is one way that our beliefs and our paradigms are formed and are created. And that's how our reality is formed. And so, when we're younger, we don't really naturally have the tools in order to challenge, and understand and understand these kind of beliefs and observe them and how they play out when we are interfacing and interrelating with the world. And in all likelihood, we've all got this kind of stuff going on in our lives, beliefs, whether it's from growing up to experiences that have we have watched and modeled from family members to peers to just the kind of cultures and societies that we have incarnated into. And these influence uh, our belief system, our biases, and many of these do not work for us, they work against us. And while we've used certain coping mechanisms by way of deflection, denial, we also have the potential to break away from them the moment we start to acknowledge that they're just limits, and we have adopted them unconsciously. And by doing this, we give ourselves the power to reclaim who we are beyond the veils, beyond the limitations that have been self inflicted. And the breaks are really holding on to shame about our unworthiness. And we can see this because in today's day and age of growth and transformation particularly, there is a lot of focus on personal development. And this isn't to discredit the power of it, yet to also hold space for the knowing that a lot of times many of these pieces of information that get shared and dispensed are limited to the intellect. And while that's one part of growth and transformation, that's not the whole picture. We need to build cognition and recognition around other facets of our growth and transformation, and somatic work and understanding and acknowledging how the body holds wisdom as well as holds trauma and holds memories is also a critical pathway to release these breaks, because things like shame, doubts, guilt, fear, anger reside in the body. And how this can be evidenced is, sometimes talking about certain things will bring up pains in particular parts of the body. And unless we have the tools, or we work with, a coach or a therapist that knows about this, we won't know, and we won't even be able to identify that these are actually, deeply rooted and anchored in our memory cells in our body, but not just our physical body, because even in the energy of the field that we move through. And so through work which is coherent with respect to understanding our mind and our body. We can be able to work through both in a way that helps us release these breaks. I want to highlight this quote by Robert Allen, who's the author of Multiple Streams of Income, who says that everything you want is just outside your comfort zone. And what is that? What is the comfort zone? So, really thinking about the sticky plane, the level that we've grown accustomed to living in, staying in the weeds, down in the valley, which is inhibiting our realness from coming forward, primarily because we've just become familiar with it. And despite the unhappiness and despite the sticky sort of a vibration that it releases inside and from our field, we may not know how to let go of this self-inflicted, self-created prison of ought to, should, must not, that has created a home inside of our inner being. And this isn't to, relay shame for us, rather to have compassion and forgiveness for the times and the parts of us that didn't know better. And when we know better, our awareness, our consciousness expands and upgrades, and this gives us the opportunity to see and hold many truths and many options, because options are actually infinite, and it's really up to our own discernment and our inner seeing, our inner knowing, to be able to recognize this and validate it without looking for signs outside of ourselves. And that's really where things like meditation, silence, prayer come in. The right quality and the right nature of prayer, not praying for something or to an external anthropomorphic deity, but really speaking from the overflow of joy and unconditional love. And that's what God or the Creator is all about, isn't it? We are a direct emanation of that. As we incarnate into this body, we have already contracted and agreed to come into this form for specific purposes. They may not be one mission, they may be sets of purposes that allow us to develop and activate and work with inner faculties that are God given. But how can we do that if we're always getting in our own way through these kind of paradigms that we have adopted? So that's where releasing these kick in and come in, um, and that can be and feel very powerful. It can also feel very, very scary, overwhelming too, and that's all right. It's okay to feel our feelings, acknowledge them, and allow them to pass. And there's another thing that I want to add over here with regards to what I just said, is that the emotional body and emotions that release through our body, probably in reactive mode to a trigger. A trigger could be something inside of us or something outside, like a situation or an experience that challenges us, will create ripples and waves of these kind of things that I mentioned earlier, which is anger or embarrassment, and sitting with it instead of running away from it uh, allows us. Excuse me, I need to drink some water. Allows us the opportunity for us to recognize that these emotions are just waves. They rise and they fall, and that's where we have the power and the discipline, but also the discipline to act beyond the emotion, beyond the shame, the guilt, the doubt, the fear, And that sort of a discipline can be strengthened from, one day to another, doing those small incremental steps. And this is something that I personally ascribe to, as I've known my life before I stepped into this mode. And also, knowing that I identified myself as a certain identity and sub identities, and what that meant, how it played out with respect to my thinkingness, which is not really thoughtfulness, the kind of patterns of behaviors that I perpetuated, and how letting go of that, having the right choice, the inner knowing, the freedom, and the courage to let go and create better patterns, better ways of showing up for myself. And that provides a huge release of confidence and just the ability to sit and acknowledge and appreciate whatever is coming up, regardless of the perception of whether it's going to be pain versus pleasure, which is really the duality of the human narrative. Something that I wanted to speak to as well. Oops. Is um is the notion of the energy that we have. The Kabbalah talks about it, and several other um, New Age as well as ancient books talk about uh, the power of energy. And one that comes to mind for me is how in the beginning there was no beginning, which also means that a lot of times when we're beginning to release these doubts, the negativity, the limitations, in a much more powerful, intentional way, and be able to step into spaces within ourselves that are actually calling forth, inner development, um, acknowledgement, working with them as well. And this oftentimes can feel like a gradient where sometimes we feel like we're advancing and then we're just slipping back, and that's also perfectly okay, because it's an ongoing thing. And we always have the opportunity to build slowly. And this is something that I kind of um, advocate for, especially because when we have a vision that's large and there are things that we want to achieve and accomplish, oftentimes overwhelm can take over, and it's a mask, because then we start to deflect our right knowing and our right action, and we begin to confuse the real with the real of life, the fantasy of it. And so being okay to do the work, roll up our sleeves, get down in the trenches, but also take those moments to come back and acknowledge everything that we are doing with respect to effort, but also the willingness. Just looking at some of my notes to see if there's anything that I have left out. Yeah, I know I've kind of spoken to this on some level within the scope of today's episode, but I would like to reinforce this in a way that allows us and invites us to, embrace how the value of how anchoring and moving, not just from the mind, but also the coherence between the mind and body, and doing some some level and degree of somatic work can help reappropriate, readjust us into alignment with our intentions, because it's all about moving forward, and forward is not always direction, but it's about progress, about the delta between who we are and who we are becoming. Um, from a meta standpoint, from an inner being standpoint, from a transformational standpoint, and understanding that, these moments of advancement can seem like miracles, but actually, all we are doing is realigning. All we are doing is coming home, remembering our, God-given gifts, being able to acknowledge who we are underneath these limited beliefs. And that truly is where the miracle already is. It already is. And that's the beauty of this. So, as we wind down week 10, I would like to thank you all for joining in today. Um, and end with this knowing and this notion of I affirm also being a paradigm, also being a belief system and set of beliefs that we can create. Like, really sit down and write what my beliefs are about myself. What's the kind of self talk that I want to give up? What's the kind of self talk that I would like to adopt more mindfully from day to day? And how that plays out in my thoughtfulness, in my decision making, in my actions. Because my energy and your energy and all of us, um, our energy speaks first um, when we present ourselves. And I'd like to say that this presentation of our energy field is not just with the world that we interface with. Rather, it is, and more importantly, the presentation and the interaction within ourselves. And that's really how we continue to radiate and emanate from this overflow, the divine flow of abundance, prosperity, divine harmony, joy, and so much more that embodies what the Creator, what Source is all about. So I wish you a very pleasant weekend, and I look forward to the next week of Success Affirmations. Until then, thank you so much for staying the course with us. See you. Bye.